I have never looked this hard at a crab in my entire life. I feel like it's staring into my soul. Hello everyone, my name is Miranda and I make stuff out of polymer clay. Today I'm going to be making a hyper-realistic miniature crab, and I'm not gonna lie, this was really hard. I don't know if you know this, but crabs have 10 appendages. 10! I mean, the most complicated thing I made before this was like a pie with a lattice on it. Go watch that short, by the way, link in the description. Needless to say, this was a huge challenge for me. Now, the first thing I had to do was figure out what kind of crab I wanted to make, because there are a lot of crabs out there. In the end, I chose this one. This is a rock crab. I chose this crab because it has that classic crabby look, and it doesn't have a lot of tiny delicate spines or very long spindly legs, so it's a relatively practical choice for clay. One of the biggest problems when making something like this out of clay is that the legs are going to be very delicate and have a high risk of snapping off after the clay is baked. I decided to use a trick that figurine makers use, and that is an armature. An armature is like a skeleton that the clay is sculpted around, and it gives the clay more structural integrity. To make the armature, I started by mixing a bunch of light yellow clay. I cut 5 pieces of wire and skewered them through a blob of clay. Each piece of wire represents one pair of appendages. Then I baked the blob of clay for 20 minutes so that it would be solid. I did this to provide a solid anchor for the wires so that they wouldn't shift around as I was sculpting. After baking my blob, I started making the back of the crab. I used this pointy tool to create the scalloped edge on the shell and used some dotting tools to create some texture. Holy sh**, this took forever. It took me well over 2 hours to get this shape, and honestly, I'm still not totally happy with this shape. Then it was time to color the crab. I used chalk pastels in red, yellow, orange, and brown, and brushed them on with some small paintbrushes to create that crabby color. I slowly layered up the colors to create some more complex shades. Overall, this was pretty fun. Then I made the face of the crab. And let me just say, crab faces are so weird. Like seriously, what the hell is this? I used my needle tool to create the lines on the face, and used a small dotting tool to make the holes for the eyes before filling them with tiny pieces of black clay. Then the crab went into the oven for another 10 minutes. Next, it was time to make the belly of the crab. It was mostly flat with a few lines that I was able to replicate with my needle tool. I also added some lumps in 2 rows across the belly to represent where the legs joined the body. Then it was on to the legs. I trimmed the wires and posed them, and then I sculpted the clay on top of them. Oh my god, this was so fiddly. The problem was that the armatures I made for the legs got in the way when I tried to sculpt each individual leg, and I had to sculpt around them. It was so hard to do. The claws were a little easier because they were at the front of the body and weren't close together like the legs were, but they were the most complex appendages out of the bunch. I added more of my chalk pastel to the legs to color them, and then baked the crab again for another 20 minutes. After that final bake, the sculpting was finally done, and now it was time for details. I took some black chalk pastel and combined it with water. Then I used a tiny brush to apply it in the lines I made on the belly and legs. This added definition to the lines and made them look dirtier and more natural. After waiting for the water to dry, I used these acrylic paint pens I have to add tiny spots to the back and legs. I also added black tips to the claws. After that, the final step was to make the crab appear wet. I used some gel nail polish top coat to make the crab shiny like it had just come out of the sea. So finally, after all that, here's the finished product. Overall, this project took me about 7 hours to make and was generally a fiddly nightmare. However, I'm very happy with how the crab turned out. This is by far the most ambitious thing I've ever tried to sculpt. I'm so happy I was able to rise to the challenge. Let me know what you think I should try to make next in the comments below, and thanks very much for watching.